Face-to-face contact is not only the moment when a being appears, it is the moment when your mind can no longer hide behind abstraction. Until this stage, contact can still be held at the level of signs, pressure, lights, silence, emotional pulls, and reality shifts. All of those are real movements in the process, but they still allow distance. You let the mind say something is happening without having to confront what kind of presence is happening. A face changes that because a face turns the unknown into relation. Most people think the face is shown so the being can be identified. Humanoid, light being, hybrid form, shadowed presence, luminous figure, small body, tall body, familiar shape, unfamiliar shape. But identification is the surface layer. The deeper function of appearance is translation. A being does not only appear as it is, it appears through what your system can receive without breaking, what your memories can process, what your fear can tolerate, and what your inner field is ready to interpret. Form becomes a bridge between their nature and your capacity. This is why beings appear in different shapes across different experiences. Some people report humanoid forms because the human shape gives the mind a relational anchor. Two eyes, a head, limbs, posture, direction, presence. The body recognizes that arrangement as something capable of intention. Even if the figure is strange, the structure allows the encounter to remain readable. Without some kind of familiar pattern, the mind may not experience contact as contact at all. It may experience it as terror, blur, light, pressure, or impossible atmosphere. A humanoid form does not mean the being is human like in essence. It means the encounter is being presented through a shape that lets the human nervous system organize the moment. This matters because many people make the mistake of treating appearance as biology. They assume the form reveals the full nature of the intelligence. But appearance during contact may function more like interface than anatomy. It is not always the being's total truth. It may be the version of presence that can survive the meeting point between two very different kinds of awareness. Light beings carry a different teaching. When a presence appears primarily as light, the mind has fewer physical details to hold on to, so the encounter moves through feeling, tone, and direct recognition. Light does not provide the same boundaries as a body. It does not offer the comfort of clear edges. This can make the experience feel loving, overwhelming, sacred, impersonal, or impossible to describe, depending on the state of the witness. The lack of hard form forces perception to focus less on what is standing there and more on what the presence does to consciousness. But light can also be misunderstood. People often assume that light automatically means benevolence, purity, or higher nature. That is too quick. Light is not a moral credential, it is a mode of appearance. It may reveal coherence, intensity, or energetic density, but the effect of the encounter still has to be measured by consequence. Does the contact leave the person more grounded, more honest, more capable of living with care? Or does it leave them inflated, dependent, confused, or disconnected from ordinary responsibility? The quality of an encounter is not proven by how beautiful it looks. It is revealed by what it produces afterward. Hybrid forms sit between these two poles. They are often the most difficult to process. They carry enough physicality to feel near, but enough strangeness to disrupt ordinary recognition. A hybrid form can feel both familiar and wrong, both intelligent and unreadable, both present and partially translated. This is why hybrid encounters often produce complicated emotional responses. The mind sees relation, but the body senses difference. The witness is pulled between recognition and alarm. This does not mean hybrid forms are automatically threatening. It means they expose the tension between resemblance and otherness. Something can look close enough to human to invite connection, while remaining different enough to unsettle the assumptions beneath connection. That tension is part of the teaching. It shows that contact is not only about meeting what is completely foreign, it is about meeting what is almost familiar and realizing that almost familiar can be more destabilizing than completely unknown. The mind knows what to do with distance. It struggles with resemblance that refuses to fully belong. Direct presence changes the rules because interpretation becomes immediate. When you are looking at a light in the sky, you can debate what it is. When a form is near, your body starts responding before debate can begin. Heart rate, breath, muscle tone, temperature, focus, and memory all become part of the encounter. The being may say nothing, but the entire room becomes communication. A face does not need words to change the field. This is why face to face contact often feels silent even when communication is occurring. The human expects language to arrive as sound or sentence, but direct presence can communicate through posture, gaze, stillness, emotional pressure, or sudden knowing. You may understand something without hearing it. You may feel instructed without being spoken to. You may receive a complete impression that cannot be reduced to a clean sentence afterward. This can frustrate the mind because the mind wants a transcript, but the encounter may have operated through transfer rather than conversation. There is a mechanism beneath this that is simple enough to understand, but difficult to live through. Human communication is already more than words. A person can enter a room and change it without speaking. A look can reveal intention. A silence can carry refusal. A posture can communicate safety or threat before language appears. Contact intensifies this principle. It expands nonverbal communication beyond the human range and turns presence itself into the message. What feels supernatural may partly be the amplification of a capacity humans already use every day without naming it. The difference is scale. With another human, the body reads emotional cues within a shared species frame. With non human or semi human presence, the cues may arrive without the same familiar code. The body still reads, but it may not know how to categorize what it reads. This is why some encounters feel deeply peaceful and terrifying at the same time. Peace may come from the field. Terror may come from the inability to classify it. Contradiction does not mean the experience is false. It means the system is processing more information than its usual categories can hold. The gaze is one of the strongest elements in face to face contact because it collapses distance instantly. To be looked at is to be located, not only physically, but inwardly. Many witnesses describe the feeling that the being sees through them, or into them, or past the surface self. That language appears because ordinary eye contact already carries vulnerability. In contact, that vulnerability can become total. The face is not frightening only because it is strange. It is frightening because it suggests that hiding may no longer work. This is where readiness becomes practical. A person who has built identity on performance may experience direct presence as exposure. A person who has avoided their own fear may experience the gaze as invasion. A person who has developed honesty may still feel intensity, but not the same collapse. The being may be the same, yet the encounter differs because the witness is different. Contact is relational, and relational events are never shaped by one side alone. This also explains why beings may adjust appearance. A form may soften, brighten, dim, remain partially obscured, or appear only in fragments because the full presentation would overwhelm the witness. Sometimes the being is not hiding, it is pacing the encounter. Sometimes the witness sees only a silhouette, a face, a hand, a light around the body, or eyes in darkness because that is the amount of form the nervous system can carry. The absence of full detail is not always evidence of imagination. It may be the mercy of partial translation. The implication is important. If appearance is translation, then arguing over which form is the most real misses the deeper point. Humanoid, light, hybrid, shadow, luminous figure, and symbolic presence may all be different interfaces of direct contact. Some may be external intelligences. Some may be filtered through memory, culture, fear, or dreamlike perception. Some may be mixtures of both. The task is not to flatten every report into one category. The task is to understand what the form does in the encounter. A form teaches by how it affects relation. A humanoid form may teach trust, proximity, and recognition. A light form may teach surrender or rigid boundaries and sensitivity to presence. A hybrid form may teach discernment within familiarity. A shadowed or partial form may teach tolerance for incomplete knowing. Each appearance carries a lesson in how the human system responds to difference. The being is not only being seen, the witness is being revealed by the way they see. This is why direct contact cannot be treated as the end of the sequence. It is not the final proof after which everything becomes simple. It is the beginning of a more demanding kind of interpretation. Once a face appears, the mind wants certainty, but the deeper work has only begun. What did the presence produce? What did it reveal in you? What changed afterward? What became clearer and what became more distorted? The face is not the answer. The face is the point where the question becomes impossible to keep outside yourself. So when beings appear in different shapes, the variation may not be confusion in the phenomenon. It may be intelligence in the presentation. The form may meet the person at the exact edge of their capacity, giving enough familiarity to allow contact and enough difference to prevent the old world view from staying intact. This is the quiet precision of face-to-face contact. It does not merely show you another being. It shows you the limits of the way you recognize being at all. What changes people the most is usually not the sight of a being. It is the realization that the encounter continues after the being is gone. That is where many witnesses become confused, because they expect contact to behave like an isolated event. They expect a beginning, a peak, and an ending. But real contact often behaves more like an insertion into perception itself. The meeting may last minutes, while the consequences continue reorganizing thought, emotion, attention, and identity for years after. You may notice something important when studying these encounters carefully. The closer the contact becomes, the less dramatic the aftermath sometimes appears externally. A person may still go to work, answer messages, buy groceries, and speak normally to friends. Yet internally, the structure through which they interpret reality has shifted. They begin noticing patterns they previously ignored. Silence feels different. Coincidence feels heavier. Human interaction becomes easier to read because the person has already experienced what it feels like to stand inside a field where communication exceeds words. This creates a different tension in ordinary life. The witness now carries an experience that changed them deeply while existing inside a world that often demands immediate certainty or immediate dismissal. People usually want contact stories to fit one of two categories. Either the encounter was unquestionably physical and measurable, or it was imagination, dream, delusion, symbolism, or emotional projection. But many contact experiences refuse both extremes. They carry physical qualities and psychological qualities at the same time, forcing the witness to live inside ambiguity rather than escape it. That ambiguity becomes part of the teaching itself. A person who cannot tolerate uncertainty will usually rush toward premature interpretation. Some decide every encounter is sacred and benevolent, others decide every encounter is manipulation or deception. Both responses create emotional closure too quickly. They protect the mind from remaining open long enough to study what actually happened. The need for certainty can become stronger than the desire for truth. This matters because direct contact tends to expose the difference between interpretation and consequence. Interpretation is the story the mind tells afterward. Consequence is what the encounter actually produces in the person. Someone may interpret the contact beautifully while becoming less stable, less grounded, and less capable of honest living. Another person may struggle to explain the event clearly while becoming calmer, more observant, and more responsible afterward. The deeper measurement is not whether the witness sounds convincing. The deeper measurement is whether the encounter reorganized the person toward coherence or fragmentation. Many people expect advanced beings to communicate through perfect clarity, but human perception does not function through perfect clarity, even with other humans. Misunderstanding already exists inside ordinary conversation. A person can say one sentence while carrying another meaning underneath it. Tone changes interpretation. Emotion changes memory. Fear changes perception. Contact magnifies this complexity because the communication is occurring between intelligences that may not organize perception through the same assumptions at all. This is one reason symbolic communication appears so often in encounters. The being may not deliver information in direct human language because language itself carries limitations. Words depend on shared context, shared memory, shared emotional structure, and shared biological reference points. Symbol bypasses some of those limitations by transmitting layered meaning at once. A single image, emotional impression, or impossible scene may carry more information than a literal sentence could hold. The witness then spends years unpacking what was condensed into one moment. People often underestimate how much human communication already functions symbolically. Dreams use symbols, memory use symbols. Emotion attaches itself to images, songs, places, and faces. Even identity depends partly on symbolic structure. A flag can create emotional reaction. A childhood object can carry grief decades later. Contact experiences move through this same architecture, but with unusual intensity. The being may not simply show an image, it may activate a chain of meaning connected to the witness personally. This explains why different witnesses can encounter similar phenomena yet describe them differently afterward. The core event may share structural similarities, while the symbolic translation changes according to the person involved. One person sees a corridor, another sees stars, another sees geometric light, another remembers almost nothing except overwhelming stillness. The variation does not automatically invalidate the encounter. It may reveal the interaction between the phenomenon and the perceptual structure of the witness. You start to realize that contact is not only about beings entering the human world, it is also about human consciousness struggling to perceive beyond its ordinary filtering system. The mind does not passively record reality, it organizes reality. It selects, edits, stabilizes, suppresses, and interprets continuously. Most people never notice this because daily life reinforces shared interpretations strongly enough to create consistency. Contact experiences interrupt that consistency and expose the machinery underneath perception itself. That interruption can become psychologically exhausting if the person tries to force immediate resolution. Some witnesses spend years attempting to prove the experience objectively. Others spend years trying to convince themselves nothing happened at all. Both approaches can become forms of avoidance. One avoids uncertainty by demanding external validation. The other avoids uncertainty by collapsing the experience into dismissal. Yet many encounters require a slower response. They require observation before conclusion. The slower observation changes how a person relates to reality generally. They begin noticing how quickly human culture reduces the unknown into simplified categories. Something is either real or fake, safe or dangerous, spiritual or psychological, true or false. But many profound experiences arrive before language capable of holding them exists. The experience comes first. Understanding follows later, sometimes years later. Contact often behaves this way because it does not only introduce new information, it pressures the boundaries of interpretation itself. You can see this clearly in how witnesses describe emotional after effects. Some report fear, but not ordinary fear. Others report grief without knowing what was lost. Some describe overwhelming familiarity toward beings they cannot identify. Others feel watched for months after the encounter, even without visible phenomena continuing. These reactions matter because they reveal that contact is not functioning only at the level of observation. It is interacting with attachment, memory, vulnerability, identity, and relational perception simultaneously. The feeling of being watched deserves careful attention because people misunderstand it easily. Sometimes it may emerge from paranoia, anxiety, or psychological destabilization. But sometimes it arises because the encounter has permanently altered the person's awareness of relational space. Before contact, a person may unconsciously assume they exist privately inside reality. After contact, that assumption weakens. They begin sensing that consciousness itself may participate in larger networks of observation and response than previously believed. Whether interpreted spiritually, psychologically, or technologically, the emotional consequence can feel enormous. This is why grounding becomes essential after direct contact. Not grounding as denial, but grounding as integration. The witness must remain capable of functioning inside ordinary life while processing extraordinary perception. Without grounding, fascination can become obsession. Fear can become worldview. Symbol can replace reality instead of deepening it. The healthiest witnesses are often not the loudest or most dramatic ones. They are the people who learn how to carry the experience without allowing it to consume every layer of identity. You may notice that truly transformative encounters often make people quieter before they make them expressive. At first, the person realizes how difficult the experience is to translate accurately. Language feels thinner than the event itself. Simplified explanations feel dishonest, yet total explanation remains impossible. This creates humility if the person handles it well. They stop treating mystery as performance and begin treating perception as responsibility. Over time, another realization begins emerging beneath all the others. Contact may not only reveal the existence of other intelligences, it may reveal that human consciousness has always been more relational than modern culture allows. People influence each other invisibly every day through emotion, attention, intention, silence, and psychological atmosphere. Contact amplifies this principle until it becomes undeniable. The being enters the encounter, but the encounter also exposes capacities already latent inside the human system. That implication changes the meaning of face to face contact entirely. The event is no longer only about whether beings exist somewhere else in the universe. It becomes a question about what consciousness actually is when stripped of ordinary assumptions. If communication can occur through presence, symbolism, emotional transfer, and direct knowing, then the human model of mind may be incomplete from the beginning. And once that possibility enters perception honestly, even ordinary human interaction starts looking less simple than it once did. When direct presence has been seen, the next temptation is to make the being more important than the effect of the meeting. This is understandable because the mind naturally reaches toward the most dramatic image. It remembers the face, the light, the shape, the eyes, the posture, the strange nearness of something that should not have been there. But the deeper teaching does not live only in the image, it lives in the change that follows. Because contact is measured not by what appeared, but by what became impossible to ignore afterward. A being's form may become the doorway, but the relationship to reality becomes the actual room. After direct contact, the witness may no longer move through life as if human perception is sealed inside the body. They may begin to sense that attention has weight, that presence carries information, and that communication can happen before language arrives. This does not mean every feeling is a message or every silence is contact. It means the person has been forced to take subtle perception seriously while also learning not to worship it. That balance is difficult, but it is where maturity begins. This is why the face cannot be treated as the final proof. Proof satisfies the mind for a moment, but it does not teach the whole system how to live differently. A person can have an extraordinary encounter and still become reckless, inflated, or confused if they only cling to the fact that it happened. Another person can remain cautious, uncertain, even unable to explain the encounter fully and still integrate it with greater wisdom. The form opened the door, but integration determines whether the opening becomes growth or distortion. You may notice that face to face contact often rearranges a person's sense of authority. Before the encounter, they may have depended heavily on outside validation, waiting for institutions, experts, communities, or belief systems to tell them what is real. After the encounter, that dependency becomes harder to maintain. They have experienced something that cannot be fully handed over to outside judgment. Yet the danger is that they may swing too far and make themselves the only authority. The healthier path is neither surrendering your experience to others nor worshiping your own interpretation. It is learning how to hold direct knowing with humility. Humility matters because direct contact does not make the witness all knowing. It may actually reveal how little the witness understands. A person can stand before a being, receive an impression, feel a transmission, or undergo a powerful shift and still not know the full origin, motive, nature, or meaning of what occurred. This is not a failure. It is a sign that the encounter exceeded the witness's existing interpretive tools. The wise response is not to pretend certainty, but to become more careful with every claim. This care becomes especially important when speaking about humanoids, light beings in hybrid forms. Each term can become a container too quickly. Humanoid can become a biological assumption. Light being can become a moral assumption. Hybrid can become a fear assumption. The teaching is not to discard these words, but to use them lightly. They describe how the presence appeared through human perception, not necessarily the entire truth of what the presence is. When a being appears humanoid, it may be offering relational structure. The form gives the witness something to orient around: front, face, gaze, intention, body language, posture. That structure allows the human system to stay engaged instead of dissolving into incomprehension. Yet the implication is deeper than comfort. It suggests that contact may use familiarity as a stabilizing mechanism. The form may be less about resemblance and more about readability, less about species and more about meeting point. When a being appears as light, the encounter may shift attention away from surface detail and into direct field effect. The witness may remember less anatomy and more atmosphere, less face and more presence, less movement and more overwhelming coherence. Light can make the encounter feel purer, but it can also make interpretation more vulnerable to projection. Because the form is less defined, the witness may fill the undefined spaces with spiritual assumptions. The deeper lesson is that beauty must still be discerned, because radiance alone does not remove the need for responsibility. When a being appears hybrid, the lesson becomes more complex. Hybrid form challenges the boundary between familiar and unfamiliar at the same time. It can stir empathy and discomfort in the same breath. It may look enough like us to invite recognition, yet different enough to unsettle identity. This combination can reveal hidden human assumptions about what deserves trust, what deserves fear, and what kinds of intelligence we are willing to regard as conscious. The hybrid form becomes a mirror for the limits of human recognition. These forms also reveal that the witness is never passive. The being may appear, but the witness participates in how the appearance is received, interpreted, remembered, and carried forward. Fear changes the face. Wonder changes the face. Culture changes the face. Memory changes the face. Even the body changes the encounter by deciding how much intensity can be held before the mind protects itself. This does not make the contact imaginary. It makes the contact relational. Relational contact means the event is shaped at the meeting point. Something may be genuinely present, and yet the witness's nervous system, symbolic language, emotional history, and expectations still influence how the presence becomes experienced. This is not strange when understood clearly. Every human relationship already works this way. We do not experience people only as they are. We experience them through memory, fear, longing, trust, and previous wounds. Contact expands that ordinary principle into a far larger field. Once this is understood, the question changes again. Instead of asking only what kind of being appeared, the witness must ask what kind of relationship formed. Did the presence respect boundaries? Did it communicate through pressure or clarity? Did it leave the person more grounded or more dependent? Did it encourage responsibility or inflate importance? Did it deepen life or pull the person away from life? These questions matter because form can impress the mind while relationship reveals the quality of the encounter. This is where many contact narratives become incomplete. They describe what was seen, but not what was learned about relation. They describe eyes, light, height, skin, motion, telepathy, and silence, but skip the deeper consequence. The deeper consequence is how the witness learns to live after being seen by something outside ordinary human categories. Some become afraid of the world. Some become obsessed with the sky. Some become more loving, more disciplined, more honest, and more attentive to the invisible exchanges already happening between human beings every day. That last outcome may be the most important one. Direct contact can make ordinary life feel more sacred without making it less practical. A person may listen better because they now understand that communication does not begin with words. They may become more careful with emotional energy because they have felt how strongly presence can affect a room. They may become more humble in disagreement because they have learned how much perception depends on the capacity of the perceiver. The encounter with the non-human can make them more human, not less. This is why the highest integration does not require constant reference to the being. The witness does not need to turn every conversation into testimony or every uncertainty into cosmic meaning. The encounter can become a quiet teacher underneath daily life. It can refine how they speak, how they listen, how they judge, how they withhold judgment, how they handle mystery, and how they treat people who have not seen what they have seen. If contact does not improve the way a person lives among humans, then its meaning has not yet been fully integrated. There is also a responsibility in how these experiences are shared. To speak too forcefully can turn mystery into doctrine. To speak too vaguely can turn experience into fog. The careful witness learns to describe without overclaiming, to honor without exaggerating, and to admit uncertainty without weakening the truth of what changed. This kind of speech carries a different authority. It does not demand belief, it invites attention. The face of the being may fade in memory, but the lesson of the encounter can become clearer over time. At first, the witness remembers the strangeness. Later, they remember the quality of presence. Later still, they begin to understand what the presence revealed about perception itself. This is how meaning matures. The event does not shrink as time passes. It becomes less dramatic and more foundational, less like a story and more like a change in how reality is approached. So the final implication of face-to-face contact is not simply that other beings may exist. It is that being itself may be wider than the human mind has been trained to recognize. A face can be biological, energetic, symbolic, translated, remembered, or partially perceived, yet still function as the moment relation becomes undeniable. The human sees the other, but also sees the limits of their own seeing. And once those limits are exposed, every future encounter with life begins to carry a quieter question. If a being can appear in a form designed for recognition, then recognition itself becomes part of the contact process. If communication can arrive through presence, then presence becomes something to study in every room. If form can act as translation, then every encounter asks not only what is there, but what must be shaped so it can be received. This is where face-to-face contact opens into the next teaching, because once the being has been seen, the deeper mystery becomes how the message arrives without needing ordinary words.
If this transmission resonated, the spiral continues. You did not arrive here by chance, and you do not leave unchanged. More teachings are unfolding across the Haret library, each one meeting you where you are, not where you think you should be. Follow resonance. The next threshold is already listening.